Well, hey there, teachers. I'm here with Pastor Ross, and we're talking about how to fill out a sermon outline using the PursueGOD.org tool. So if you're preaching from the Sermon Link tools on PursueGOD.org, how do we fill it out? We've done this many, many times over the years, so let's talk this through.
Right. So a lot of times people who are working from these tools have a basic outline, but the question is, what am I going to say to fill out those points in the outline, to expand on them? You know, how am I actually going to decide what to say and what not to say?
Yeah, because remember, before we get to the points for today, we don't want people to just parrot back what we've prepared.
Right.
You know, our teaching team gets together, we work together collaboratively, someone takes the lead on it, you end up with an outline. But the whole idea is that just gives you the skeleton, the bare bones.
Right.
Each preacher has to personalize it.
You have to flesh it out and personalize it for themselves, but how do they do that, especially if they haven't got a lot of experience?
That's right.
Yeah.
So you've got some great tips for us. Why don't you walk us through?
Well, the first thing is to keep the big idea in mind. When we talk about the big idea, that's the one overarching statement that captures the essence of that message.
Right.
And so as I fill out the outline, I always have to use the big idea as a filter to say, are the things that I'm saying, do they fit with that trajectory of the message?
Yeah.
Do they really go along with that, or are they taking me off on a tangent somewhere?
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's what's important. It's just as important to decide what not to say as to decide what to say.
Yeah, that's good. And really, for guys that are new to this, you know, our process when we start working on a sermon is we come to the team with the big idea.
Right.
So even the big idea is so important for us. Like we focus on that. Is this really germane to the topic? And does this really fit in here? Is this a related topic? And so our team works hard to think about the big idea and keep it clear in our mind when we're writing the content.
Right.
So then the preacher who's preaching it should keep that in mind as well.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And then another related to that, a big picture issue is to keep in mind the target audience. You know, if you're teaching in a typical church on a Sunday or weekend, you know, you're going to have a mixed group of people in the audience. But a particular topic might suggest or lend itself to a certain target audience.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to keep that thought in mind, say, do I really want to speak here to younger people today? Or am I talking to married people? Am I talking to people who are still investigating faith, or I'm talking to a longtime Christian? Then that's going to help me decide how I frame the material.
Yeah, and I think in particular that last thing you mentioned is kind of where they stand spiritually. That's something that we really work hard to think, okay, we want to say it in a way that reaches as many people as possible, but doesn't alienate investigators, doesn't alienate, you know, longtime Christians. That we're saying it, we're trying to be engaging for everyone throughout the whole thing, but keeping your target in mind is good. Now, Ross, I like what you're going to do for us next year, because you've thought through 4 questions that are just really helpful for someone who's new to this as they're fleshing out that outline for themselves and customizing it and personalizing it. Walk us through those 4 questions.
Okay, number 1 is, what do I need to explain? In other words, what do I know that the audience doesn't know? Now, this is not just, you know, showing off your knowledge, okay? But in a particular verse that I might have read, or a particular concept, I might have to define a term. I might have to explain some historical background. Is there something that I need to explain for this to be sensible to the person who's hearing me? That's the first thing.
Yeah, and especially I think when you're thinking about someone who's new to Christianity or is not a Christian yet, when you ask that question with those people in mind, I think you'll find out you have to explain a lot.
Quite a lot. And so I might have to decide. That'll help me to decide what I need to get into and what I don't have time to get into.
And explaining it doesn't mean it has to be a 10-minute explanation.
Right.
But it's just if you use a word like salvation, you might have to explain what that means, right? Or if you share a verse that to you is a verse that every Christian knows, well, someone who's far from God doesn't know that verse, right?
Right, exactly.
So you have to explain that. Jew, Gentile, that's something most Christians know, but a non-Christian doesn't understand that debate.
So I have to evaluate first, what do I need to explain? And then what do I need to prove? And what I mean by that is, like, you know, I'll make an assertion, or the Bible will make an assertion, that I can't just assume that is going to be received as truth. I might have to prove my point a little bit. If I'm talking about the consequences of sin, Not everybody believes that. So I might have to give an illustration or an example to prove that the point that I'm making, to drive it home, not just to understanding, but also to convince the person that it's true.
Yeah, that's good. And again, this is true for anyone, but especially with someone who's investigating, I like to think about, an agnostic friend that I have. And when I make a claim, I might say, okay, I'm going to back that up. I'm not just going to assume that everyone's going to agree with that or believe that. I'm going to back that up with that person in mind. All right, what's your third question?
And then what do I need to apply? And so it gets out of the realm of just the cognitive to say, how does this affect my life? And so as I'm filling out the outline, I need to give some suggestions about how that truth that I've just been talking about, explaining, proving, how that actually takes shape in life. So we say, you know what, why don't you, this would be something that you're going to choose to have a response. And I'll throw out some possible choices to help people see connecting the dots from the idea to action.
Right. And maybe also in that section is sharing for yourself how you have applied this in your life, or maybe how you failed to apply it in your life.
Right.
Be authentic there.
Yeah.
And then there's one more, and to me this last one's really important, because I think if we don't do this last thing, then our sermons can sometimes be flat and boring.
Very flat. So what do I need to illustrate?
Yeah.
The fourth thing, an illustration has a lot of functions in a message. Number one is it does make it more engaging, more interesting. And so I want to sprinkle in illustration throughout the whole thing to keep people engaged. Illustration it's helpful in proving something. Because if I give a story that demonstrates the principle, there's an aha moment. And the illustration helps people go, oh, that's right. And it also helps to apply it. Because through an illustration they can see maybe one of the ways that principle could take shape in life.
That's good. Well, those are great, 4 great questions to use. And I encourage you, if you're using these resources, if you're prepping to preach a sermon with these sermon resources, we give you a lot of content. We hope you use it well. But more than anything, we want you to learn how to customize it, personalize it, make it your own, really take ownership of it, and then let God speak through you to people as you help them to pursue God. We'll see you in the next video.